What's going on? Gen X Army Vet here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I got a series of videos coming from TikTok, and as you read in the title, you can see in the thumbnail, teachers are fed up with your demonic ass children. They're tired of it. That's why they're starting to quit. I think 79,000 to 100,000, something like that, quit this year alone. And I can only see it happening more often because teachers are tired of this shit. So without further ado, let's get in the video.
Something is in the water because the behavior is not changing. Something is in the water because the behavior is not changing. When I first started teaching 7 years ago before COVID, I could threaten to call home and they would stop. I could call home and they would stop. This year, baby, I'm calling home. I'm changing seats. I'm giving warnings. I'm writing them up. And it's just like they come back and they do it again. And then
I remember back in the day when I was in school, teacher threatened to call your parents. Yeah, you straighten right the fuck up. Because back in the day, if mom, dad got their call, they're bringing an ass whooping with them. I was scared of my parents growing up. Like today's kids, they're not scared because they know their parents aren't gonna do nothing. The parents aren't gonna spank them like they used to do back in the day. Because parents are afraid to get in trouble. Parents are too busy trying to be buddy buddy, bro, dap up, the children instead of actually being a parent and putting their foot in their ass when they need it. They give them all this technology, so parents aren't actually parenting. They take them to school, or kids go to school, parent goes to work, kids at school all day, come home, parent comes home, they're on their devices. There's no interaction. There's no talking about how was your day, how was school, blah, 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 blah. So that's what's going on. It's only going to get worse before it gets better. These parents aren't teaching their kids how to have respect. They're not teaching the basics at home. They're expecting the teachers to do all this extra stuff on top of the stuff that they're supposed to be doing at school, which isn't happening.
the attitude on them. Why do I have to ask you who you're talking to? Why do you not know who you're talking to? And then they always want to be like, oh, this teacher's mean. That teacher's mean. Are they? Are they mean? Are they really? Or you just don't understand boundaries? Okay, because this is not a playground.
Yeah,
Who are you? Something is
exactly.
in.
But that's the thing with these kids these days, because they don't care. They don't give a fuck. They'll tell off their friend just as easy as they'll tell off a grown adult. They don't care because they can't do nothing. And they can't send them out the room because all they're going to do is put them in some other teacher's class and just pretty much just transfer the penny ass from one to another.
We sacrifice the many for the one. Seems kind of backwards because usually everywhere else in society, it's the other way around. We sacrifice the one for the many. And obviously, I don't actually mean sacrifice. What I mean is we allow one student who cannot handle being in a classroom, and we allow them to disrupt the learning of all the other students. We allow them to physically assault their peers, physically assault their teachers. We allow them to destroy classrooms.
And speaking of which, like you're talking about destroying teachers, destroying classrooms, there's been numerous cases like that. All you do is go on the internet, go on Facebook, go wherever. You find the reports where grown, teachers, grown adults are getting beaten down, getting sent to the hospital. Um, there's one kid, I think he was like 18 or something like that. He had like cognitive disorders, and I think he put the teacher in a coma because she took his Nintendo Switch. There's another case where the kid took a chair and threw it at the teacher and knocked her eye out. So now she's permanently blind in one eye. These are kids doing this. There's another report where kids followed the teacher to her car and they jumped her at her car and took her stuff because she told them to be quiet in class. This isn't, they're not making this stuff up. This is actually happening.
And we just continue to allow it and allow it and allow it while all the other students suffer. Why do we do that? Because this is not how it always used to be. Used to, if you could not handle being in a school, you got sent to an alternative school. Yep. Where if you were going to disrupt the learning, you were going to disrupt the learning from other disruptors.
I remember that because I had a couple of friends that were, they were sent to alternative school because when the teacher sends you out of class, you go to in-school suspension. And if in-school suspension, ISS, doesn't work, they send you to alternative school. And we don't see them until, well, I didn't see my friends until graduation. They let you come back and reconnect with your school to graduate, although you spent your entire time away for alternative school. They give you a chance at the end of each class year to go back and, maybe everything's been rectified. You're good to go. Come back, join class. Nope. Goes right back to the next alternative school. So like I said, we didn't see him until graduation. Like, he was a stranger to us.
But for whatever reason, in the last, I don't even know how many years, we've started sacrificing the many for the one and allowing one child to take away from every other child's learning. Now, I want to mention, this does not mean I'm not sympathetic to that one child. It breaks my heart when there is a child who has a traumatic background or some other underlying issues that.
Okay, don't make excuses. That's what she's starting to right now. If they has like some traumatic background, I should have been figured out before the kid even got to school. The counselor should be, going through, talking to each of the kids just to see how they are, how their parents are. But that's another thing, because a lot of these teachers or a lot of these parents don't be attending, the parent-teacher conference meetings. They don't respond to none of the notices. Only time a parent responds is, the teacher tries to get a hold of the student. Never, the teacher tries to get a hold of the parent, and she can't get a hold of the parent, so she ends up sending a note or does something, makes a kid do something, and the kid goes home, complains about the teacher, and then the teacher gets a call from the mother, or the mother will go up to the school and try to get in the teacher's face and threaten to whoop the teacher's ass. It's like, about what you doing to my kid? Why my kid, saying this and that, when it's the actual kid's fault, but the parent doesn't want to accept accountability for their fucked up ass kid, so they put everything onto the teacher. It happens all the time. Or only time when, the parent is involved is when prom night, or when the teacher says, no, your kid can't go to prom because it's, XYZ, or something with football or some type of extracurricular activity, when the kids have terrible grades, so they shouldn't be afforded the opportunity to be able to attend certain things. But the parent to get up there, he'll complain, they'll threaten the teacher and the staff and the school that you better let my kids in, because that's what happened in the case that happened last year. A mother went up to the school, threatened all this lawsuit stuff. Kid was failing. He's like a 20-something grade average, and they had to let him go through because, the mother was threatening to sue.
That prevents them from being able to operate in the classroom. But at the end of the day, when do we draw the line? When do we say enough is enough? And when do we find a system that works better for everyone? Because clearly what we're doing now is not working.
Are quitting mid-year again at record numbers is one of the reasons why. A student who wasn't assigned to me or my classroom was let into my room by another adult, a teacher's aide, and repeatedly ignored my direction and instructions to leave. Eventually, she repeatedly called me a and threatened me with physical violence, which sent me into a panic attack. I called the office for support, and as soon as the dean of students showed up to my classroom, I left and I went to the stairwell to go cry and have a panic attack. Once I calmed down, which took my entire lunch, I was expected to go back and teach my classes because we had a sub shortage. And
okay. So she's reading another teacher's confession. She's a teacher herself, but she's reading a situation that happened with another teacher. So these kids are driving the teacher to the brink of nervous breakdown because nothing can happen to them. Like, you can't threaten them with punishment because they're not going to care. They don't care about if they learn it or not. These kids have no aspirations or no will to be able to do better and go out and achieve anything, because they know that their parents are going to have to come there. They're going to give them what they want anyway, regardless, because especially right with the education system, they got to push them through regardless of they're failing or not, because that's how soft our education system has become in America. If you go to these other countries like Japan, China, Korea, I know firsthand, those kids will run laps around adults even over here in the States. They know more about our own country than our own children know about our own country. Shit you not. You can go on YouTube and look at these videos where people go around asking random questions, basic questions about our geography, what two countries border the U.S., what big water mass or ocean masses do we have, to our left and to our right. They don't know this. What's the 5 Great Lakes? They don't know that. They don't know anything about our country. What's the capital of the United States? They don't know stuff like that. But you ask any Japanese or any Asian kid, they're going to know more about our country than we do. It's fucking sad.
Nobody could cover my classes for the rest of the day. By the end of the day, the videos that the student took of me circulated amongst the student body, and I ended that day sitting at my desk feeling the most powerless and defeated that I've ever felt in my entire life. The student was not given a consequence that was fitting. She was sent home for the day. That was it. I received no apology, no restorative circle from the student or the adult who let them into my classroom, and the paraprofessional received no disciplinary actions. He stood in my classroom and allowed his student to speak to me in a degrading, violent, and disrespectful manner.
That's bullshit. Like I'm saying, 'cause like back in the day, Oklahoma, those teachers, each teacher had their own paddle, and if they couldn't handle it, they call up the principal. The principal would come down, and he freaking give you the paddles, paddling, swats, whatever you want to call it, depending on which part of the country. And like we'd be out there just whack, whack, whack. One kid goes back into class, the other kid comes back out. He does the same exact thing. Punishments were harsh back then. I mean, it only took me one time. Like, never again. And like I said, kids have, they don't fear punishments because a lot of times nothing's going to happen. What you said, the kid got to go home, nothing happened. Goes back the next day, and these teachers got to live with this. This is their day. This is their day reality, the daily reality. And they can't quit because if they quit, then they got to be able to provide for their own family. So it's like, what the fuck you do?
That class period was over. I had several students come up to me and say that they wanted to jump to my defense, but they were also afraid of that student and afraid of for their own safety. That's when I knew the profession I once loved was no longer the profession I needed or wanted, and I left a month later. And that story is not unique. Teachers aren't leaving because they don't care about the kids. They're leaving because the system no longer lets them teach kids. They're not allowed to teach self-management. They're not allowed to teach respect or accountability anymore. We are told to keep the peace, keep the bodies in the room. Some are even told to pass at 20%.
That's crazy. Just think about that, though. You got possible chances to get 100, and you're not even making the bare minimum. I think like 70, 60 something, I don't know. But whatever that bare minimum is, I think 70 in the 70s is a C, yeah? So it's like what? That D, I think it's in the 60s. Then so what an F. So this person's not even F. You're like unsatisfactory. He's like way below standard. And these kids think it's bragging rights. I think it's, it's a flex that they get over on their teachers like this. Not realizing how much harder it is going to be for them when they become adults. Because these teachers can't hold them accountable for their actions. But somebody will once they become an adult. When you're legal age, you're going to either get deleted, sent to prison for the rest of your life, or going to have a shitty job because your grades reflect how you live, how your school was. So they just don't realize it yet. There's no foresight whatsoever. There's no, if I do good now, think good things that happen later on. If I do bad now, everything bad is coming my way. They don't understand stuff like that.
Just get the kid the diploma. Pass them along so that the data looks good. But when we do that, we're not protecting the students. We're doing them a disservice because they are walking into a world that will hold them accountable.
Exactly.
We could have taught them how to handle that with grace, empathy, and reflection. But instead, we're told to look the other way. Teachers quitting mid-year every single year is not an exodus. It's self-preservation. And deep down, it's heartbreak because they want to stay. The system is just making it so that staying.
Some of y'all have never been slapped at full speed. I can tell. I can tell just by the way you live your life. Some of y'all have never been slapped at full speed. I can tell.
Some of y'all ain't never been slapped at full speed. That's fucking funny.
I can tell just by the way you live your life.
It's true though, because some of these kids ain't never got their ass beat, especially by their parent. Because kids are always threatening, I'll run away, I'll do this, I'll do that. Some kids are even beat up on their parents. That's how fearless they are. Like, this generation is completely different. That's sad. I gotta hear it again.
Some of y'all have never been slapped at full speed. I can tell. I can tell just by the way you live your life.
Facts. They just don't care. They really don't care.
300,000 teachers quit last year.
Yeah.
I got their anonymous confessions. What they revealed will shock you. Here's the teacher confessions. I spend 6 hours on paperwork and 2 hours actually teaching. I'm not allowed to fail students who haven't learned anything. The curriculum is designed by people who have never actually taught. I'd homeschool my own kids if I could afford to quit. We're babysitters with degrees, not educators. Parents know their kids better than I ever will. The system isn't broken, but speaking up means losing my job. Even the people
That's pretty bad though. You know, when you are a teacher and you're trying to speak up and yo, these kids ain't doing this, they ain't doing that. You know, they don't want to learn. You know, I'm having the hardest time trying to. Then you're getting from the people from the top down saying, "Well, teach them anyway." You know, let them stay in class, pass them because they want to look good on their numbers to get extra funding. Versus all these little knuckleheads are graduating and they're going to be ministers to society. These are the kids who are going to read about having all these kids, you know, 5, 6, 10 kids with 7 baby daddies or baby mamas. And they're the same kids that's going to be running from the cops that we see getting deleted. The ones that I didn't do nothings, you know, those type of kids. The ones that's going to be working in, you know, Dollar Tree, giving you attitude because they keep your money because they don't know how to count the money. Although it clearly says on the register what the money is. So it's these type of kids that's going to grow up and be the future leaders, the future of what this country is going to be. And it's fucking sad.
people inside the system know it's failing your children. Comment broken if you've heard teachers complain about the system that they work in. 300,000.
Yeah, like I said, the education system as a whole in America, North America, is fucking terrible. And I'm pretty sure you guys know of kids that walk around just they take pride in not knowing shit. You know, when you talk, like I say, when you talk to any other kid outside of the U.S., you go to Canada. There's kids that you know they're smart. You go down here, you know, in Mexico. I don't know about Mexico, but you know, I can know about Japan. I know about Korea. I know about the German kids. They're smart as hell. They're learning every day, and especially China, because everybody wants to compete with America. You know, our children, like I hate to say, it, you know, our children here suck. You know, we got the worst education system in the world. So take it if you will. If you get mad about it, it's true. You know, come in me comments if you want, but you can't argue the fact. You got all these teachers that post it online all the time about how much they hate their job, how much the kids can't read. You got seniors graduating high school, can't read, write, can't basically, you know, no type of problem solving or, you know, reading comprehension whatsoever. These are the kids that's going to be operating in society and we got to work around them. Think about that. But anyway, let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Let's get the conversation started. How do you feel about these teachers quitting? Like, what's the alternative? You know, should we go, you know, go back to some type of learning how they did during COVID? Because they obviously didn't learn shit during COVID. Think about it, like all these kids just learn how to do is play video games and get on their little personal, you know, computer devices and not do shit. And now it's starting to reflect that. But anyway, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Hook a brother with a thumbs up. I'm trying to get to 4,000 by the end of the year. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.